Hello and welcome back to Cambridge Clinical and today's video about Venn diagrams. So today we're going to cover the basic theory behind Venn diagrams and how they work, followed by two example questions from the UCAT question bank. So first of all then, what are Venn diagrams? Well, a Venn diagram is simply an illustration that shows the logical relationship between two or more sets of data with overlapping and discrete sections. In this diagram, if we call the left-hand circle A, that means that any items that only have characteristics of A will be written in this circle. Similarly, if we call the right-hand circle B, only items with characteristics of B will be written in that right-hand circle. The overlapping section in the middle is for items or data which are characterized by both A and B. And finally, any area outside the circles, which I've characterized by the figure 0, is for data which does not fall under A, B, or A and B categories. Let's dive into a practice question now. In this type of question, you will be expected to form your own Venn diagram from the information in the question. So it reads, of the 150 aquariums across a US state, 60 had yellow crabs, 43 had white dolphins, 81 had starfish, 20 had only starfish and white dolphins, 12 had only white dolphins and yellow crabs, 9 had only starfish and yellow crabs, and 7 had all three. And you're asked, how many aquariums had none of these three? So pause the video now and see if you can come up with the basic structure of what your Venn diagram will look like. From the question, we can establish that there are three broad categories: yellow crabs, white dolphins and starfish, and that leads us to create this Venn diagram of three overlapping circles. So now that we've got the general shape worked out, it's time to fill in our values. My number one tip for all of these Venn diagram questions where you have to draw your own diagrams is, when filling in the data, always start with the figure that is in the most overlapping section. So if you have a Venn diagram with two circles, always start with the data that fits both circles, and similarly here, with a three-circle diagram, always start with the figure that will go in the very middle. So here that is number 7, because there's the number of aquariums that had all three species of fish. Then you should insert the data for the next most overlapping sections. So in a three-circle diagram, that'll be the sections that overlap and are shared between two circles. So for example, here we see that 9 had only starfish and yellow crabs, so we can put that in the shared space between starfish and yellow crabs. Similarly, 12 had only white dolphins and yellow crabs, so we can put that in the shared space between white dolphins and yellow crabs. And finally, 20 had only starfish and white dolphins, so we can put that in the shared space between white dolphins and starfish. As you can see now, all that remains to be filled in our diagram are the sections representing aquariums which only have one type of fish. So let's start with starfish. We're told that 81 had starfish. So it might be tempting at this point just to simply write 81 in our starfish section. But remember, the aquariums that had starfish along with other species, such as yellow crabs and white dolphins, and the 7 that had all three, are also included in this number of 81. So what we need to do is establish, of these 81, how many have already been accounted for by aquariums that have starfish and other animals. So that's 7 plus 9 plus 20, which is 36, and therefore 81 minus 36 gives us the number of aquariums that only contain starfish. That leaves us then with 45 aquariums that only have starfish. At this point you can check your answer by adding 45 to 20 to 7 to 9, i.e. all the numbers in that starfish section, and it should add up to 81. Now let's do the same for the white dolphins. So we're told in the question that 43 aquariums had white dolphins, but we've actually already accounted for 12 plus 7 plus 20, that is 39, through aquariums that had white dolphins and other species as well. And so if we take 39 from our total 43, we see that only 4 aquariums had only white dolphins. Finally then, for the yellow crabs, we're told that 60 aquariums have them. However, we've actually already accounted for 28 of those via aquariums that had yellow crabs and other species, and that leaves us with 32 remaining. Now that we've got our finished Venn diagram, let's return to the question and see what we were actually asked. So we were asked how many aquariums had none of these three. Now why not pause the video for a second and see what you would do with your data to try and calculate that value. So the total number of aquariums that we have dealt with in our Venn diagram can be calculated by simply adding up all the numbers that we've included. And when you do that, you get 129. That means that in this US state, 129 of the aquariums have at least one of these fish species, if not more. And therefore, given we know 150 is the total number of aquariums and 129 have at least one of these species, the difference, 21, is the number of aquariums that don't have any of these species. Let's now have a look at the second type of Venn diagram question that can be included in the UCAT, and that is questions where they give you pre-drawn Venn diagrams and you have to choose the correct one. So here it says, a school timetable is being prepared for 50 students. 20 students are taking geography, 20 students are taking history, and 12 are going to take art. 10 are going to take geography and history, and of these, 5 want to take art as well. Which of the following diagrams best represents the above data? So pause the video now and have a think how you might approach this question. So exactly as I said before, the best method to deal with all of these Venn diagram questions is to start with the figure that is in the most overlapping section. So we have students here at the end who are going to take art, geography and history, and we're told that there are 5 of those. So if we look at the Venn diagrams, all correct Venn diagrams must have 5 in the middle section. And so we can therefore immediately rule out the fourth Venn diagram because it doesn't have 5 in the middle section. So now that we've dealt with the data in the most overlapping section, i.e. students taking all 3 subjects, let's move to the next most overlapping section, which will be students taking 2 subjects. So we're told that 10 students are going to take geography and history. However, we've dealt with 5 of those students already, as they're going to be taking art as well. So that lets us conclude that 5 are going to be taking just geography and history, given that 5 and 5 make 10. And so that means that the number 5 must appear in the shared space between 2 circles. That is, a circle representing geography and a circle representing history. So we can therefore rule out the first Venn diagram, which has the number 10 in this spot. So at this point, to differentiate between the final 2 Venn diagrams, it helps to look at the total number of students taking each subject. So let's look at the bottom left diagram first of all, and within that, the left-hand circle. In that circle we have a 15 and a 5, so together that 20 could represent the 20 students that take history or the 20 that take geography. In the right-hand circle of that diagram we have a 10, a 5 and a 5, so 20 again. That also could represent the students taking history or geography. However, in the top circle we have a 7, a 5 and a 5, which adds to 17. Now we were hoping to have a 12 because that's the number of students that take art. So there's something wrong with this diagram. Looking at the diagram on the right hand side now, starting at the top, we have a 10, a 5 and a 5, 20, which could represent geography or history. Then at the bottom right, we have a 10, a 5 and a 5, again, could be geography, could be history. And in the bottom left, we have a 7 and a 5, which adds to 12, which is the correct number for the number of students taking art. So by that measure, we can rule out the left-hand diagram and we're left with one correct Venn diagram, which has all the correct numbers in the shared spaces and the correct totals. So that pretty much sums up our session on Venn diagrams. Always just remember my top 2 tips. Firstly, always begin with the data in the most overlapping sections. And secondly, when dealing with the totals for a circle, remember that the data in the shared spaces also contributes to those totals.